What's up, everyone? Happy Wednesday and welcome to the TDR Trade of Black podcast. Hope you're having a good week, midweek. And here we go. Obviously, there's a lot of interest pertaining to the space right now. We got some speculation on, is rescheduling imminent? Is that all smoke and mirrors as well? There's an anti-dumping probe going on with Israel and 10 Canadian LPs. What does this mean? How serious is it? We're going to bring on actually an international editor in just a moment to break down a story involving this and what this means. So let's welcome in Mr. Anthony Verrill to the podcast. Happy Wednesday. Just got back from a nice business meeting. How was lunch?
It was good. It's good to see. It's good when you don't see people for a long time and you kind of just pick right up where you left off.
Met with some interesting people.
It's good to have friends like that. Yeah, it's my buddy. He's the head of biz dev for Jeter out in California. They're expanding throughout the country. Getting into some new markets, and they're, I think, the number one infused pre-roll in the country right now.
Nice.
A bunch of guys I knew from college that went out to Cali after they had an exit in the music industry and started a cannabis brand, and they are kicking ass and taking names.
Gotta love stories like that. Isn't that associated with Dwayne Wade?
Dwayne Wade's a strategic advisor, I think, on the business. Yeah, that's correct.
Gotcha. That's a great story. All right, let's get into it. Into the Wire, headlining all the biggest headlines in cannabis here on the TDR Trade to Black podcast. And we begin with the story, and we're going to bring in an international editor in just a moment. It's involving Israel launching an anti-dumping probe on 10 Canadian LPs. This story broke by international editor Matt Lammers from MJ Biz 48 hours ago. So let's bring in Matt and learn more about what this story means, how serious it is. Good to see you, sir, and thanks for joining us here on the podcast here today.
Hey, thanks a lot for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so I was online and I read this story and I was like, this really grabbed my attention, but break us down. Like, what is this story really involved? The 10 companies that are involved as well, and really, how serious is this?
Sure. Yeah, first of all, Israeli Cannabis Magazine and StratCan had the story first, and they did some good reporting too, so I didn't exactly break it. But it's an important story, and we did get a comment from the Canadian government that did advance the story a little bit ahead. So it's a big deal because Israel is the second biggest importer of medical cannabis in the world, behind Australia. Okay, so who did it? So the Director of Import Administration of Israel's Ministry of Economy started the probe. It's important to understand that. The Canadian government said that they were disappointed. The federal government told me they were disappointed in the decision to launch the probe, and that's kind of a big deal, I think, because how often does the Canadian federal government go to bat for the international Canadian cannabis industry? This is quite rare, I think. So I thought that was notable. And then what's next? 10 Canadian companies have 30 days to submit answers to very detailed questionnaires they were sent by the Israeli government. If we kind of zoom out and look at the Canadian export sector in general, so in April 2022 to March 2023, in that fiscal year, Canada's exports of medical flower were 59,000 kilograms, and that's about a 50% increase over the previous year. And I like that context because you can see there's meaningful growth in Canada's medical cannabis export sector. So we're not talking a couple $1 million here like we were 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like it's starting to become real money. The problem though is that almost 80% of Canada's exports went to only two places, Australia and Israel.
Okay.
Israel imported 21,000 kilograms. Australia imported 26,000 kilograms. Germany was number 3 with 10,000 kilograms of imports. The problem is the two biggest places where Canada exports to, Australia and Israel, they have grand designs to be net exporters. So how long can Canadian companies really count on these markets?
Right.
And you see with this Israeli probe, there's already a lot of friction, right? The biggest medical marijuana market in the world that's federally regulated, that caveat's really important, is Canada. And we don't allow medical cannabis imports for commercial reasons. Colombia and Jamaica were pretty pissed off about that. Israel is also entering that arena. Australian medical cannabis companies have complained to me about that in the past. So I think this is going to be the tip of the iceberg. I think the days are pretty much over where Canada is going to completely dominate the export market for medical marijuana that has not been through clinical trials. I think that we've dominated the market over the last 2 years, but a lot of countries want to participate in that industry because we're talking real dollars now. So just to paint a picture of the real dollars, it was negligible a few years ago.
Right.
And in 2022 was the first real year, $107 million of exports. And then last year, $160 million of exports. So these are real numbers. And for Canadian companies that are struggling to break even, if you can make $5-10 million from exporting medical cannabis to Israel or Australia, that's really going to help you a lot.
For sure.
But I mean, are these allegations here, like in a nutshell, like the Israelis are basically saying the Canadian LPs are just kind of frivolously exporting their excess capacity to Israel, or like the Canadian LPs are kind of just looking around. They're like, hey, we've got this cannabis we're sitting on. Let's just send it over there and just book it as revenue.
So what happened was that a bunch of Israeli companies got together and complained to the Israeli government about the Canadian imports, and they said it was hurting their businesses financially. Now, if Canada is exporting that much to Israel, which they are, sure, it's hurting their business in terms of it's competition, right? But then the question becomes: is it unfair competition or is it fair competition? It's not for me to say. I mean,
that capacity? Is there the capacity currently built out in Israel though to service that market and let's say negate the importing of the Canadian cannabis? Or I mean that's yet to be determined because that's
a great question.
Because I mean if that is, then obviously the companies that are complaining, I think their complaint has merit. But if not, then I mean I think the Canadians have every right to be exporting to that market as long as the cannabis is going to good use.
Right. And I can't answer that question. I think they probably don't have the capacity to meet local demand completely right now. Otherwise, I think they probably would. And they also want to be exporters, right? Israel's been talking for years about being an exporter of cannabis.
Yeah, because I mean, the part of the story was always that if you want to get your cannabis into Europe, Israel's a great jump-off point because Israel can actually export into the EU. So I mean, being the net exporter has always been part of the Israeli game. Which I always thought the Canadian LPs would somehow also find their way into both of those markets almost simultaneously.
Yeah.
Notable names include Oxley, Canopy, Kronos, Organigram, SNDL. Like these are some big heavyweights that were announced and outlined in this story. Did it surprise you at all?
No, because those are all the exporters. Those are the biggest exporters, right? So this is exactly what I would expect. I was surprised about Tilray because Tilray told me they haven't exported medical cannabis to Israel from Canada. They said they've exported it from Portugal. So and this is just part of the probe, right? So they sent that questionnaire to all these companies, and they're all going to reply. Tilray is going to be like, hey, we haven't exported.
Was it possible that because I know Hexo I think is exported to Israel? Was it possible that that's the Tilray connection? It was cannabis that was exported via Hexo, and then obviously once that acquisition's complete, it's now Tilray.
That's definitely possible, yeah. But Hexo is also named in as one of the 10 companies too. So
what are the ramifications of this? Like, what happens if this is validated? That I mean, that there's an excess being just dumped into the Israeli market.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the documents that were on the Israeli government website said that nothing will happen. There won't be any penalties imposed within the next 60 days. So the Canadian companies have 30 days to reply, and then I guess the Israeli government's going to look over those documents for 30 days, and then after that, they may make an immediate decision, or it might take longer. I kind of doubt that there's going to be meaningful financial penalties imposed on these Canadian companies. But I'm not a lawyer. You might want to talk to an international trade lawyer about that. This is new territory, right? Because there haven't been very many international trade disputes with medical cannabis. I've written a little bit on like Colombia, Canada, Jamaica, Canada, but there hasn't really been much. This is the first full-blown, anti-dumping probe that's ever happened in the marijuana industry.
Yeah, it's interesting to say the least.
Yeah. Does this surprise you at all, this story?
Given the competitive nature of the import-export market, it's ultra competitive. There's only 3 meaningful import markets, and there's like there's probably at least a dozen countries wanting to access those markets. So given the competition, and then given that there's real dollars at stake now, it doesn't surprise me.
You just think like the industry is becoming more competitive with other countries getting involved, right? And the first mover advantage that Canada presented, like people are catching up, is from what I'm reading between the lines, right?
Right. And countries, you have EU GMP certified exporters in Colombia right now that want to tap the Israeli market. You have EU GMP certified companies in Portugal. So, and then there's a bunch of African countries that also want to get involved. And so I don't think that the export game is going to be as profitable as it was over the last few years.
Oh, Canada,
It's
right?
going to grow, right? It's going to grow. The export market and that's exciting because the export market grew 50% last year.
Yeah.
We don't have the figures yet for 2023. So the growth is there, and cannabis companies more than anything right now need sales. And so they see these sales overseas and they're going for them.
Oh, how times have changed when it comes to the Canadian market, right?
Very much so.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, listen, I appreciate you checking in here today and give us a better understanding of what this story meant, but we'll be watching it closely, but appreciate the time. Let's keep in touch, Matt.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you.
Interesting to see how that develops, but
very interesting. Very interesting. Israel's always been a part of the Canadian LP story, especially as it relates to exportation. So, I mean, it's interesting and definitely going to keep a close eye on that.
Yep. But I think it's just the, revolution of, the industry. It just more and more countries are seeing what was right, what was wrong, and it's becoming more and more competitive. We saw those stories even like with banks in the U.S. When we talked to Tyler Burline, some banks actually stepping away, but that's just the growth of the industry as more and more people get involved. This is the TDR Traded Black podcast, our first segment, Into the Wire, headlining all the biggest headlines in cannabis. I'm your host, Shad Dales, with Anthony Verrill. As well, quick reminder, we've launched our Baked In Daily newsletter this week. We're going to be launching tomorrow our weekly equity research report, which is going to highlight MaryMed. This is exclusive to TDR Baked In newsletter subscribers. So subscribe. We've got the link in the comments below, and we'll give you an outline as to what we like and been watching as far as MaryMed and what you can expect next, as it's written by our lead analyst, Bill McNarlin, as we like to call him, the TDR professor. Headline number 2 next up. Just when we think rescheduling would do a lot for the industry, we might go a step further if U.S. Senators Chris Van Hollen, Elizabeth Warren, John Fetterman, and Chuck Schumer involving descheduling, who have compiled a letter to Attorney General Merrick Garland and DEA Administrator Ann Milgram. So, Anthony, break down with this letter what some of the key points are outlined in it.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a lot of political posturing. I mean, I think Elizabeth Warren, Chuck Schumer, John Fetterman, they're kind of seeing the conversation develop around cannabis as it relates to rescheduling. And then they want to take it all the way into left field and say, all right, well, they're trying to reschedule it. Why not? Let's just deschedule it altogether. I mean, it creates them political will. It puts their hats in the ring as far as the conversation goes.
Yeah.
And I mean, while ultimately I would love for cannabis to be completely descheduled and removed from the CSA, I just don't think that's feasible in the political climate that we're currently in, or the world that we're in right now. I mean, I think America gets there. I don't think America is going to get there this year. I think we're going to get incremental. Schedule 3 is going to be first. You're going to then see more research. You're going to see medical efficacy proved in the years to come. And then there will potentially be descheduling and cannabis removed from the CSA as it deserves down the road. This is interesting because John Schroyer from the Green Market Report this afternoon put out a tweet that I replied to, yikes, in marijuana moment fashion, that he's got a correspondent in Washington that says rescheduling is imminent. Love to know what the word imminent means. Could be tomorrow, could be in April. April might be imminent considering the timeframes that we've been working with in cannabis. Twitter got in a groundswell on that news. We saw MSOS kind of kick higher. Let's wait and see. I mean, a lot of people, especially the watchers, the people that are watching this podcast, I mean, are positioned for that announcement. It doesn't change anything for me. And again, it's just conjecture. We're basing a lot of market activity right now off of headlines that aren't news. It's hearsay. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to rain on everybody's parade. Don Murphy talks to Ron DeSantis. The Florida Adult Use Ballot Initiative should get out of the Supreme Court and onto the ballot come November.
Yeah.
That's not news. That's conjecture. It's just more positive sentiment shifting.
Yeah.
This rescheduling is imminent. I hope it's tomorrow, but chances are it's probably not going to be. I kind of just prefer to keep it real in terms of where we're at. I mean, we're seeing a lot of the market moving. We're seeing a lot of share prices appreciate, the names that we're all in. The tides are turning, the winds at our back. It's going to happen. But I heard this and I heard that. Like,
this is what makes the space so interesting, though, right?
Like to be honest, yeah, but it also creates a mind fuck for everybody. Unless Don Murphy comes out on Twitter and says, "Hey, I had a meeting on the Hill today. I met with X, Y, and Z. It's coming out of the DEA in the next 2 weeks." I really am going to take it at face value and kind of just roll my eyes and move on. I'm not buying any more stock because of it. I'm not going to change my investment thesis because of it. It does make for good conversation, though.
You think TMZ should get involved in this industry? They'd have news every single day.
Not at all.
Yeah,
absolutely not at all.
Professor Guap, thanks. The definition of imminent is very soon. Yes, I appreciate that. But yes, this industry is all about headlines, and any little like blow in the wind headline that comes across, people get super, super excited. But it's the anticipation, right? What are you looking at?
Is that real guap or is that fake?
Is that real guap? Oh, I got El Guap. I mean,
if this is real, it's a pretty big deal because to be honest, I take Sam at face value over seeing John's tweet. Sam's actually on the Hill. If that's true, then yeah, this is about to move.
Sam just tweeted, "We finished briefing staff and influencers Capitol Hill and are now meeting with Congress members about big announcements coming up in the next 24 hours. Stay tuned." Real. I guess we'll have to wait and see. Yes, you're right, John. I'm curious, like if we look at, going back to what I originally brought up about descheduling, how does that, you think, impact the timeline when it comes to federal legalization? Because rescheduling is a lot different than descheduling, and the chances of
descheduling is federal legalization.
So it's once it's descheduled, it's fully federally legalized.
It's alcohol. Descheduling means cannabis tomorrow is in the exact same conversation in the exact same category as alcohol. It's no longer on the Controlled Substances Act. It's good. It's done. It's best case scenario. It's a CPG at that point. It's literally like a beer.
Yeah, and you don't see that happening obviously this year, but that's huge.
We're just not there. We're not there as a society. Like we can't agree on anything. Would I love it to happen? Sure, I'd benefit greatly from it. But I don't think it's in the cards in anytime soon.
Yeah. Headline number 3, let's now focus on Virginia. We're 3 years after legalizing small amounts of marijuana possession for adults. The Virginia General Assembly is now working on creating a marketplace for recreational cannabis. So I guess the first question is, like, this is a medical market that's projected to be about $50 million this year. How will this potential bill be set up and structured?
So this bill bodes well potentially for the Virginia adult use market. However, Glenn Youngkin has not said a single word on it up until now. Glenn Youngkin is a conservative Republican in the governorship of Virginia. Virginia's a long time coming with adult use. I really think it's going to take a less conservative, more liberal governor to get this done, or the tide's really turning and the GOP and the conservative governors are going to take not to plug Sam, but sensible approaches to marijuana and actually start to roll out these adult use markets.
Yeah.
There's 3 major MSOs in Virginia: GTI, the Cannabis, and Jushi. They've all got formidable footprints.
They do.
Within the state of Virginia. They would benefit from this greatly. I would love to see this happen, but I mean, we've been having this conversation for some time now around PA and VA, and we are still here. So I'm going to watch it closely, see how this kind of progresses through the motions in Virginia, and obviously we'll report back on it when we start to see some traction.
Yeah, we're going to bring up actually Jushi in our daily movers. We're looking at a chart of how, the industry and some of the stocks have performed from January 1st up until this year. And Jushi, needless to say, there it is. First time here today, needless to say, is at the top of that chart. Let's now switch to headline number 4. Last one I want to bring up here is U.S. multi-state operator AYR Wellness, who recently announced that they're close to closing a debt structuring plan for its Canadian subsidiary AYR Wellness Canada. The plan involves exchanging its existing debt for new senior secured notes with a higher interest rate and longer maturity date. So I guess the first concern, or question, I shouldn't say concern, Anthony, is there any dilution here that investors should be mindful of?
So AYR's taken a interesting approach to this. Ever since this was announced, the warrants that are going to be issued to current shareholders and the warrants that are being issued, they've referred to as anti-dilutive warrants. I get that. I don't know if I agree with the verbiage that's being used, but it is a very, very good, nice olive branch that's being extended to their current shareholders.
Yep.
If I was a current shareholder of AYR, or if I was a long-term shareholder of AYR, these warrants can create immense value for people that are currently holding at these prices. If you really do think that there's a true dislocation between the fundamentals in the business and the market cap of the company, which, I mean, I tweeted yesterday, I think AYR's still trading at 1x top line revenue on a trailing 12. I mean, they've got a kick-ass footprint in key markets that are yet to activate, such as Florida and Ohio. There's a lot to like of AYR. I mean, I like the CEO of AYR. Yep. I like the fundamentals of the business. I like that they've already pretty much addressed all of the debt. This is going to come up at a certain point in time in 2026 where this is going to convert. That event is of the debt converting to equity is going to be dilutive. It's a dilutive event. You can't spin it any other way. They're going to add more shares onto the float on the back half of this in December. I think it's December 2026.
Yeah,
will be when that event happens for the total sum, I think, of $243 million.
Wow.
In debt. The business should be in a much, much different position in December of 2026. If we're all right, adult use in Florida should be well on its way, since we're kind of benchmarking July 2025 as the start, if and when it passes. Schedule 3, I fucking hope passes by then. So you've got no 280E. The free cash flow becomes the free cash flow story for AYR becomes immensely more contributory to the fundamentals of the business. The debt's then taken out, and all that time you're sitting on warrants that should be well in the money. That, if exercised, will double your share count. I like the move. I like that AYR is planning for tomorrow today. With their shareholders in mind. And now the debt's solved for the most part. You know what's going to happen down the road in December 2026.
3 to 5 years, not 3 to 5 months in this space as we continue to communicate, because you're right. All those things that you outlined, rescheduling, possibly descheduling, no 280E.
Let's not.
I know.
Possibly descheduling is not even.
But what I'm saying is that this is 2024. I think if you see there's going to be a lot of change in this space over the next 2 years. And to your point, the Florida market, arguably the biggest cannabis market in the world, right?
Could be one of them. Be one of them.
Christian writes, who tweeted the rumor? I don't know. If anybody wants to comment on and let us know.
It was John Schroyer, the reporter from Green Market Reports.
Oh, there it is.
If you follow me on Twitter, I retweeted it.
Okay.
So it should be right there.
Mohammed actually wrote, February will be a good month, I think. Who is ready for Germany? Buckle up tight. Mohammed, you heard anything about, I know we were talking about the first month or two that we could see rec approved in Germany. I haven't really heard anything since, but it'll be interesting to see if we get some news sooner rather than later. That wraps up Into the Wire, headlining all the biggest headlines in cannabis. It's now time for segment number 2 here on the TDR Trade of Black podcast, which is our daily movers. And here today, we want to once again, we brought it up last week, a chart, which is for the week. We want to look at stocks and how they performed since the beginning of the year and outline some of the stocks that I think a lot of our viewers have been watching. I'm just going to put this on a full screen right now. But so we break down this chart, notably at the very top, company called Gold Flora, which is a California operator. I really don't know much about them, but no surprise, Air Wellness, which is an investor favorite, Trulieve with their Florida news. These are some big gains since beginning of the year that you can see why there's a lot of optimism pertaining to the space right now.
Yeah. The market's mature. I mean, the market's on. I mean, I don't want to say it's on fire right now, but it's moving. These are names that are moving on headlines. Like I said, it's not news. It's more so sentiment shifting rhetoric, we'll call it, because none of it's concrete. But the DeSantis news, the momentum going into to a rescheduling scenario, Schedule 3. Don Murphy coming out and talking about the dates, talking about how he thinks it's not a matter of if or when. Safe banking surfacing again. One thing I do want to point out, though, on this chart is two of the laggards that have completely lagged the rally, being Canopy Growth and Tilray. So I've taken a lot of shit in the last couple of weeks for not talking about Canopy and Tilray. I was told I was a racist white dude by some guy in the comments. I was told that no one likes me because I don't talk about Canopy and Tilray. Well, Canopy and Tilray are red year to date, but if we get rescheduling, I think both of these names shoot out of the starting blocks and start to get momentum. I'll go top to bottom, both names. Canopy Growth owns Wana Brands. They own Jetty Extracts. They've got the call option on acreage. Canopy USA becomes a formidable player on rescheduling and on further legalization regulatory reform. People know that. People understand they have Constellation attached. Canopy, despite what some people think, does have leverage to the United States. They are a part of the conversation when talking about the regulatory reform and the growth of the cannabis industry in the United States of America. Yes. They are warranted in that conversation.
Trades Tilray.
And Canopy, I don't even think that the nature of the stock being red year to date, the only reason I think Canopy is red year to date is because of the financing that they announced. They canceled it, then they upsized it. I don't think that the market digested that well. And I mean, that's it. I mean, it's not fundamentally driven for them to be left out of the conversation. Also, I think the Global X and the Horizons ETF, they did hold some Canopy within their holdings. So I'm sure that's being sold as well. Tilray, we had Irwin on. Irwin's part of some very large businesses in the CPG space. Tilray is also red. I think Tilray is more of a capital market story and just not getting love because people see dilution, and I think people don't trust it. Institutional money, I think, is going to go into Tilray and Canopy on U.S. news. There's a lot to like about Tilray's U.S. footprint as it relates to alcohol. I think that is foreshadowing as for their entry into the United States in the cannabis industry. Those assets can translate into a cannabis business far down the road. There's also a lot to like about Tilray in Germany. They've got the pharma business. They've got a cannabis business that's operating in Germany. Tilray is a multi-continent story, much like Curaleaf. I don't put them in the same bucket, but I'll just say it since they have exposure to North America as well as Europe. Am I buying Tilray? No. Would I buy Tilray going into the future? Would I buy Canopy going into the future? Probably. I think that they get legs, they get momentum, and they're both dislocated from the market from a valuation perspective.
I think
those are the two Canadian LPs, as well as Sundial, that should be within the conversation when we're talking about U.S. regulatory reform.
Well, I think we're finally seeing it. The sentiment's shifting. For the longest time, we've talked about the big Canadian LPs with international ties, but you can clearly see that with imminent news, thanks for the definition, Guap, which means very soon, something that we've been talking about in this industry for quite some time, for a number of years, is that when will these U.S. players come to the forefront, which this chart pretty much, showcases that firsthand. Some of the other notable names,
I mean, that being said,
Air Wellness.
Canopy is still worth 2x of like an Air Wellness. It's worth 2x from a market cap basis. It's worth double of Ascend. Canopy is worth, I think it's in parity pretty much it's actually worth about 100 million less than TerraSend. I mean, Canopy's got some room to run, all things considered, with the size of the business and what they can be in the future.
Agreed.
And I'm saying what they can be, not what they will be.
Yeah.
The stage is set for them to do it. If they do it, it's yet to be determined.
Jushi's up 60% on the year already. Good January, to say the least. Don't look now. C21 Investments and our good friend Sammy up over 40%. Dan Aaron's Mondays with Dan ETF is up over 35%. Thanks for scrolling through that. You want to bring up any charts, Mitch? If I bring up, what's this company? I shouldn't say what's this company, but I keep seeing Vexed Science. I'm learning more and more about them. I knew about them like a number of years ago. Do you have much up to date information?
They're an Arizona. They're an Arizona operator. They're one of the smaller names in the space. I don't know anything really about the fundamentals of the company. I learned about them maybe 3 or 4 years ago. It's not one of the names I look at on a daily basis.
Truly, though, man, that is proving to be a big winner for many in the space right now. Mitch, you want to bring that up?
There's a monster right there. Truly.
Yeah. Nice year. That's for sure. Good month. And
that's what happens when Ron DeSantis comes out and says, yeah, the Florida Adult Use Initiative is going to get off the ballot.
Yeah. And to our viewers out there, we are trying hard. We've reached out to Kim Rivers and her team, waiting to hear back. We hope to have her on soon because, man, would now not be a great time to have her on to talk more, wouldn't it?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, that wraps up segment number 2, Daily Movers. And every Wednesday, segment number 3, we're going to have a little segment now called Agree or Disagree. You ready for this?
Yeah, fire away.
You just sound so excited for this.
I'm going to start asking you the questions on agree or disagree.
You should. Maybe you should. Okay, first one, agree or disagree. Florida Supreme Court will rule in favor of the recreational marijuana amendment bill or ballot, excuse me.
I agree. I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree. I mean, DeSantis has appointed most of the Supreme Court. The arguments were weak. It stimulates the economy in the state of Florida. Lobbying dollars are going to the initiative within spades. I don't think there's any chance that it doesn't get put on the ballot.
I agree. I agree with you there. Agree or disagree? New York will get the illegal dispensaries under control. I say agree.
I completely disagree. I think Governor Hochul's full of shit.
You do?
Have you seen any progress yet?
I can't speak on politics and progress. I think it's still too early, but
I mean, have you seen, we were there 3 months ago. You saw an illegal dispensary on every street corner.
Yeah, but it actually opened my eyes when I was talking to Boris back in December when he's saying they're going to clean this up and it's going to be a tremendous opportunity for the wholesale market. And I didn't realize, who's going to actually step into Manhattan as far as a retail perspective. But if there's incentives to flip them onto the legal side, I think that there's something there and probably conversations going on that I'm not part of, which is
I don't think you're wrong, but I think there's a reason why Curaleaf's first dispensary in New York was in Hudson Valley and not in one of the most densely populated cities in the world.
That's right now, but give it a year or two, right? Agree or disagree? The FDA will announce in Q4 the approval of MAPS's MDMA protocol. I'm saying, timeline wise, I don't know, but yes, I definitely agree that they will approve this.
Yeah, I don't know if it gets done this year, but I think it does get done ultimately. Yeah, there's enough efficacy there, and I think there's enough merit to get it through.
Yeah. Let us know. Comments below. Agree or disagree with some of the stuff that we've outlined, anything that we've missed, any compelling questions that you want us to ask, let us know. Christian, you wrote High Tide, baby. Yes, I wanted to confirm with everyone, Raj Grover from High Tide is actually coming on to our podcast next Wednesday. As it stands right now, it's going to be a pre-record and we're going to post this on probably the Thursday, but we're pushing hard to get them on the live stream a week from today to talk about their earnings. I don't know if you saw their earnings from earlier this week, but man, this company is doing a lot of right things.
No, they were good. They were solid. Also, just so Cleve, when we bring something up on the screen, there were like 20 names there. we can't go over every single one of them. There's ones that I know like the back of my hand. There's ones that we know that we're going to cover. Schwaz is a lesser known name. It's not one of the ones that I cover on a daily basis or one of the ones that I've ever owned. So which was just left off the list. But we don't skip over anything with any intention. Like it's just a rolling thing when we bring up those lists on the screen.
Steve S writes, can we get an update on Slang Worldwide? Haven't talked or spoke to them in a while. Had a lot of great brands and partnerships, but just a stock that I feel like it can't get out of its own way.
Yeah, I mean, Slang's another name. I mean, I thought Slang was going to be a formidable player in the space. It was a great distribution business. It was a great story. The financial engineering and the share count in the business is just terrible. The stock can't move.
Wasn't that one of their first partnership announcements with Canopy back in the day? Slang.
Yeah, I would be, if I was a betting man, I would say somehow Slang winds up under the Canopy umbrella with Canopy USA in the long run. Now that's just pure speculation.
Yeah.
But I do think that would happen.
Yeah. Mohammed,
John Levine, we're actually shooting a podcast with this week, aren't we? On Thursday.
Who is it? Sorry.
John Levine, Maramed.
John Levine, we're actually doing a week from tomorrow. We're doing a podcast with John. That'll likely be posted. What's that? February the 8th. So we'll probably post that on the Monday, which would be February the 12th. But yes, we're doing our full equity research report, which is a great reminder for all of our listeners and viewers out there right now. Make sure to subscribe to our baked in newsletter. Log on to thedalesreport.com. We have Chartered Financial Analyst, TDR Professor Bill McNarland pushing out our daily content. We've got our first research report regarding MaryMed tomorrow. And if you want to see it, it's exclusive to TDR Baked In newsletters. So please subscribe. We appreciate the follow. And there's a lot of good, compelling information that we've outlined in this first research report. But we're going to be pushing probably 1 to 2 of those out on a per weekly basis, and as many as 40 different cannabis companies. So a lot of helpful information, especially as this industry heats up. And one last thing, Mohammed, do not pick the 49ers. You can't pick them over Mahomes. I've realized that's just a bad choice come playoff time.
Yeah. Also, Seth and Jordan, I know I did tweet out I started a Sundial or SNDL position yesterday. I did. It's obviously not financial advice or not saying do one way or another, but the stock looks pretty attractive here, and I like their leverage to the United States with Parallel and with Skymint going forward. I think the valuation is just completely dislocated from a fundamental to a market cap perspective. And I think it's going to be one of those other ones that potentially gets institutional interest and also catches momentum and starts to catch a bid on Schedule 3 actually coming out, being announced.
Cleve, appreciate the comment. You guys rock. 30012 writes, I feel like SNDL's Canadian retail cannabis revenues are going to take a hit. Care to elaborate off of that as to why you think that? Leave a comment below and we'll respond. In the meantime, this has been good. We got Guap coming back again on Friday. But for now, enjoy the rest of your day. And appreciate everybody for watching. Thanks, everybody. And we'll see you
everybody
at noon Friday, 12 o'clock Friday. Floors on Monday and Wednesday, 12 o'clock on Friday. Take care, everyone.
Finally get some golf in on Friday.
There you go. Hey, everyone. Thanks for watching. And if you want to learn more about the emerging industries that we cover, then leave a comment below and let us know who you want us to interview, the questions you want asked, and the information that you want to learn. We want to hear from you. As usual, click on that bell for all notifications to get the latest information. Share this video with your network, and don't forget to subscribe to our channel because we would not be here without